Hello everyone and welcome back to another voiced process video with steps. Hope you guys have all been well. I know it's been super busy on my end. I've been having a lot of commission work that I've been trying to truck through, a lot of big projects that's happening right now, which I will eventually share with you all, and I'm very excited to do so. But this month has been a bit of a busy one, so just trying to stay on top of everything and still get a lot of content out through to you guys. So we're here with another one, and we're going to be creating dragons on a mountain scene. So in this video, I'll be talking about the layering system and basically the big steps to take and think about when creating a scene like this. Because when you look at it, there's a lot of depth, there's a lot of detail, but then when you break it down, it's actually really, really simple. No more than about 4 or 5 main elements to this. And you will know by the time that you finish watching this video, and I hope that you learn a lot from this. So first off, just like the usual approach, we're going to sketch in your main mountain or your focal point. We're going to sketch in block in an object, however you like it. We're just going to place it in the center there. See that line in the bottom? That's going to be our horizon line, and that's where we're going to have things sitting on, which basically means that it's going to be our eye level, and it'll be a guide for us working forward so we know that everything is in perspective. Now I'm just going with a dark brown in this one here. Later on I will be eventually adding in some more colors, such as a lighting color and a midtone. So this blocking dark brown color will be acting as a shadow. Next, I'll be using a nice sunset orange to paint in some lighting surfaces and some textures, just to give some form to the mountain and show exactly what it looks like, aside from the silhouette. So we're just going to open up a new layer on top of that blocking one you created before, and then just start painting it in and create some nice dimensions, create some variations to the shapes. And you can see now the way that I'm just painting it in right now, you can see that how a lot of the rock textures and the shape is actually working. So I'm just going to paint it in and try mold it in a way that shows a lot of interesting dimensions and just making it work. And this will help identify your lighting going forward, so it's really important to understand how your lighting is affecting your silhouette and your object here, and then going forward you'll be using this as a guide and how it's going to influence your other areas. So I'm just going to drop in a block of green here just to have some grass. I think I didn't want to keep it as a blank space. I felt like it was a bit annoying actually, just to have a bit of quite a lot of blank space working there. So I'm just going to drop in some green and create some grass, and I'll come back to it a little bit later. Next step is to create some midtones. So now that your main silhouette has the shadows, which was the first set of dark browns that you used, and then you've got the lighting, which is the bright orange. Now we're just going to add in a bit of a mid-tone somewhere in between those two colors. And this can act as the textures within the mountains that's not directly affected by the light. So let's say this color that I'm using right now is basically the same color as where the orange would sit, but because the lighting is hitting that surface directly, it's essentially become a bit more rich. So that's a bit of thinking behind this color. So we're just going to paint it in, and this mid-tone is going to be really helping you really show how your object is working and how it's formed. Now we're just going to quickly jump back to the grass area that we had beforehand. Now you see I'm just going to pull it down a little bit. I'm going to create some water. So I'm just going to pull it down and then reserve some space for some water. And you can see that there's like a very vicious, harsh line right underneath the mountain there. And we're going to get rid of that. You're going to add in elements such as bushes or trees, plants, grass or anything like that, or even fog, just to break it up a little bit, because right now it just looks really, really strong. And we're just going to, fog it out a little bit. We're going to use this opportunity to push it out as well, just to give it a bit more depth. You can see that I'll be using the Gaussian blur or the motion blur for the fog I've got there, so it doesn't really matter which brush you use. You can just kind of paint in a rough shape and then use a motion or a Gaussian blur, and that will just really just give it like a really nice smoky motion to the fog as well. Then you can just lock that layer up or add a clipping mask on top of it and then paint over it with like a nice richer orange tone as opposed to the blue that I started painting with. Now we're just going to go to the back and open up a new layer and create some background mountains. Now you can see the color I'm using here is a little bit more on the bluey, desaturated blue side. So the reason why I do this is I wanted this piece to be quite far back, and you can tell if you look at the sky color, it's got more of that similar hue as well. So I'm just having a play on that and just showing that the atmosphere at that distance is really affecting the mountains. And I also thought that having this color would really break apart from our main mountain here, just to bring more visual interest towards the piece in the center. For these ones, I'm going to create it in a way where it looks more like snow mountains. So you can see here I'm using colors that reflect, that are basically much lighter compared to the bright orange that we use for this one in the front here. So we're just going to create the same process, just slabbing in some lighting textures here, and we're just going to be using colors to show that it's going to be a snowy mountain. Now let's revisit the bottom area again. We're just going to work on the water. Now how is it going to look like water? We're just going to simply add in a reflection of the mountain inside it. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab all the layers for your main mountain there, including the fog, and you're going to just duplicate them all and merge them all, and you're just going to flip it vertically and then clip it onto that block of the shape that we use for water. As long as it's underneath, as long as it's behind the main mountain in terms of layers, and it's behind that grass patch in the foreground there, it'll just sit nicely in there. Then you can just drop the opacity a bit, and then let the color and the blocking show through a bit, and you'll get like a really nice reflection going on there. You can also use a motion blur or a Gaussian blur just to show that the ripples are having some sort of movement that's affecting the reflections. And you can get some really nice water reflection effects simply just by doing that. Now you'll see me jumping back and forth and having a play and replaying with some of the mountains and the shapes and whatnot. And I do this quite often. Sometimes if I have an idea in mind, I'll just go in and I'll just paint it in quickly and see if it works. If it doesn't, it's okay. We'll revert back to what we had. But if it's something that I like even more, then that's even better, isn't it? So don't be afraid to play around. If you feel like you've got better ideas, or if you've got an idea that you're really constantly thinking about, try it out. If it doesn't work, no worries at all. It's okay. But if it works, even better, right? So it's bonus. Now we're just going to create some clouds. Now obviously we're going to be creating clouds at the back as usual, but this time we're going to add in some clouds at the front as well. Now adding clouds in the front and having them quite small will show that this area is quite majestic, quite misty, and it will create a lot of distance in between our foreground and that mountain itself. Now after you do it, you can just quickly add in a Gaussian blur or a motion blur as well, just to soften it up, and then it will look like there's a lot of movement going on here as well. And just a reminder that when you're painting your clouds, also create it in a way where it draws the attention towards your focal point. So you can see that by the waves of the clouds, it kind of looks quite random, but at the same time, it's really structured and pointing towards my center main mountain there. So, it's very important that all your elements meet up and in some way lead the viewer's eyes to where you want it to look, which is your selling point. Now it's time to create your characters or dragons or any other creatures you'd like to add in this area. Now, because of the way that my light setting is working here, my dragons and the size that I want my dragons to be, which will actually be quite small, they would get away with being basically just silhouettes with some rim lighting on some of the surface in the direction of where the sunlight is hitting. So I'm just going to keep these. I'm going to sketch in some nice shapes that make the dragons sit on top of those mountains there, and I'm going to keep them quite small. And I'm also going to keep them as just silhouettes using that same brown that we used initially for the shadow of that mountain. And now I'll be working on the grass area here. I have mentioned many times before with the grass brush here, in case you guys might be asking. This is a grass brush from Devon L. Kurtz, and you can find that on her Gumroad, and it's a free brush pack that you can download for Photoshop, I believe it is. I think there might be one for Procreate as well. But yeah, this one's definitely for the Photoshop version. And it's one of the brushes from her foliage grass brush pack, and it's really helpful. And I use it from time to time whenever I create a piece with grass. So I'm just going to paint in the grass areas here, block it in a little bit, and then add some lighting. And then I'll be finishing it up with adding a character standing right in the center there as part of my storytelling. And the rest will just be touching up, refining, and potentially just finishing the piece here. And that brings us to the end of this video. I have tried to keep this one as slow as possible for you guys to follow, and I hope it's been really helpful for you guys to see that. It is quite a simple illustration, and I've just broken it down, and you can see that from here it's actually not too much involved. It's all about breaking it down into steps. So whatever you have in your mind that might be a bit complex, you write it all down, you break it all down, and eventually you just start to see it for the process itself, and it's actually quite simple.